All right, guys, here we go. Solving equations number 3. Once again, get out a piece of paper. You can fold it in half vertically. Put the title on it, EE.3C, Solving Equations 3, and be ready to do the first few with me, writing everything down, formatting it correctly. Here we go. All right, I got my paper all set up, ready to go. On the top it says EE.3C, Solving Equations 3. I got my vertical fold in it. And then I copied down number 1. If you scroll down a little, you can see this is number 1 in your Canvas quiz. The equation says 6x minus 9 equals 15. One of the things I like about when I copy it down is not only that I need it there so I can see exactly what I'm doing, but it also helps my brain process it before I put in the work on this. So I can clearly see that the variable is over here on the aniline side. And we talked about how you can draw, some people like to draw a little dashed line like that to make it really clear that we have 2 distinct sides to this equation, and to make it really clear that all of this stuff, all of it is over on the Adeline side. And the only thing on the Penelope side is the number 15. We're going to change that number 15, and how we change it depends on the inverse operations we need to do in order to isolate the variable. That was a super mathy statement, so let me show you what I mean. So this is the side with the variable. Over here on the left side, the Adeline side. And we talked about in your video today how when you solve these, you have to do the additive inverse first. So as I look at this, I'm going to turn something into 0. I want to turn it into 0 first. When I'm thinking through that, think to yourself, which one makes sense to turn to 0? It doesn't make sense to turn the 6 into a 0 because it's stuck to the x, and that would make the x a 0, and that is not what we want. It makes a whole lot of sense to turn the 9 into a 0. So I'm going to focus on this minus 9, turning it into 0 with a plus 9. Whatever I do to the Adeline side, I absolutely have to do to the Penelope side. I turned that into 0, and now I'm going to write down what I have left. On the Adeline side, I have a 6x left. That means my variable is not isolated yet. I don't have 1x, I have 6x. I'm going to fix that with step number 2, hence the name 2-step equations. Now I need to do the math on the Penelope side. 15 plus 9 is 24. Okay, the variable is still on the Adeline side, but it is not isolated yet. Now I'm going to focus on turning a number into 1. So this is the process we learned as we went through this, is first you do the additive inverse, turn something to 0, then you do the multiplicative inverse. And we actually wrote all of that out in those little charts. You don't have to write that out every time, you just have to show it to me. So you don't have to write the words, you don't have to say, this is additive inverse, now I'm going to do multiplicative inverse. Just know that's what you're doing and show me your steps here. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the 6 into a 1 by going divide by 6, and then divide by 6. This is a 2-step equation because you have to do the additive inverse step and you have to do a multiplicative inverse step. Really, it's things we've already done, we're just putting it together. So this is turned into 1 now, and my final answer is x equals 4. And of course, just like on the last couple of assignments, you're going to go back to Canvas and you're going to type in x equals 4, no spaces. You solved that equation. Let's try another one together. Number 2. Number 2 says this. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write number 2. It says x over 2 minus 10 equals negative 15. All right, I want to do the additive inverse first. And if it helps you to find that equal sign and draw a little dashed line down, then do it. This was kind of separated out in our table, but when you draw a little dashed line, what you're saying is, okay, this is where the 2 halves of my equation split. This is on the Adeline side of the equation. All this stuff is on the Adeline side of the equation, and all this stuff is on the Penelope side of the equation. For a lot of students, it helps if you draw a little dashed line to say, okay, I'm going to do something over here, and then I also have to do it over here. So I'm going to turn this 10 into 0 first. It's a minus 10, so if I wanted a 0, I have to do a positive 10 or a plus 10. Whatever I do to the Adeline side, I also need to do to the Penelope side. See, I'm writing the exact same thing on both sides, just once on each side of my dashed line. That turns to 0. Now what do I have left on the add line side? I have x over 2 equals, do the math over here, watch your signs really closely. Different signs, subtract, take the sign of the one that goes farther. The variable is not isolated yet because it is still being divided by 2. My goal now is to do the multiplicative inverse and turn that into a 1. If they are dividing by 2, I am going to multiply by 2. Notice I did it on the top because I'm trying to turn this into 1. And if I just did something on the add line side, I of course need to do it on the Penelope side. This turns to 1, and this gives me x equals, you're multiplying now, different signs, negative. You'll go back to Canvas and you'll type in x equals negative 10. Now these ones take up a little more space, so it's possible you'll have to go onto the back side with your work. That's okay, because I want to make sure I leave a space from my longest one. So I come across here and I'm going to put number 3 right there to make sure I can put number 4 right here and everything lines up nicely and looks good. Okay, all right, question number 3. This is the last one I'm going to do with you. Number 3 says 5x minus 6 equals negative 21. Careful with your signs on that. Okay, all right, so I'm going to split this and I'm going to say, okay, here I see the add-line side, the variables over here on the add-line side with a bunch of other stuff, and the only thing on the Penelope side right now is this constant negative 21. That will of course change as I do my inverse operations. That will change. All right, I'm going to do additive inverse first. Turn something into 0 first. Find the thing that makes sense to turn into 0. It's going to be the thing that's not stuck to the variable. It's on the same side as the variable, but it's not stuck to it in a multiplication way. So this minus 6, we're going to go plus 6, plus 6. I turn that to 0, and whatever I did to the add-line side, I also did to the Penelope side. I have a 5x left on the add-line side. I need to do the math on the Penelope side. Different signs, subtract. Take the sign of the one that goes farther. Negative 21 plus 6 is negative 15. Now I'm ready to do the multiplicative inverse and turn something into 1. Divide by 5. Divide by 5. And x equals negative 3. Different signs, negative. You need to watch those signs really closely because, as we now know for term 2, you have to get a minimum score correct on this. And if you miss the negatives, you probably won't make it there. You guys are going to keep going. Of course, if you have any questions or get stuck on anything, please ask for help.